We are so happy to be with Chris Wark today on Diagnosed TV show. He is a cancer survivor. He had stage 3 in 2003, had stage 3 colon cancer. And how he beat it is an amazing story, and he's going to share it with us today.
Thank you, Shannon.
Welcome.
So glad to be with you.
Glad to be.
Good to meet you too.
Thank you.
So yeah, 2003, I was 26 years old. I was having abdominal pain, and I went to the doctor. I was misdiagnosed with an ulcer, and after a couple months, went back. They did a colonoscopy, and they found a golf ball-sized tumor in my large intestine. Sent it to the lab. Next day, they called and they said, "You've got colon cancer." So, typically, what happens when you're diagnosed with cancer is they rush you into surgery, right? We got to get this out of you right away before it spreads and kills you. That's what they told me. So this was 3 days before Christmas, December 2003.
Wow, that's pretty close to where we are right now.
Yeah.
It must bring back memories.
Yeah. Well, I'm coming up on my 11-year cancerversary in just a couple days. Yeah.
Yay.
So, so it was a total whirlwind, obviously, getting diagnosed, and then it's about to be Christmas. So we postponed the surgery until after Christmas because I just didn't want to be in the hospital for Christmas, right? I figured, okay, another week's not going to kill me.
Right.
So we scheduled the surgery for December 30th. They went in, they cut out a third of my large intestine, they took out the tumor. When I woke up, they said, you know, it's worse than we thought. It spread, you're stage 3. It was in your lymph nodes. We took out everything we could see. But you're going to need 9 to 12 months of chemotherapy. And so at that point, that was another bummer, right? Because I was expecting to go in, have the surgery, and then be able to just go back to normal. And now it's like, oh, now I'm a chemo patient. So a couple interesting things happened while I was in the hospital that really started pulling me toward a different path. The first one was the very first meal they served me in the hospital was a sloppy Joe. Okay? The worst cafeteria food.
Some people don't know what a sloppy Joe is. I've told your story. Explain what a sloppy Joe is.
I'm not even sure I know.
With sloppy Joes.
I'm not even sure I know what a sloppy Joe is. But
yeah, I call it mystery meat sandwich.
Yeah, it's like a burger. You've got the burger bun, and then you've got like ground beef or whatever, and it's got a lot of sauce. So it's like
sweet sauce. It's a sweet tomato sauce.
Like a barbecue sauce and ground beef. So it's really sloppy, like really messy beef sandwich. It's, you know, just the best example of terrible high school cafeteria food.
Yeah.
And they put this thing in front of me. I mean, you know, I'm cut up. I'm in the hospital, and they brought me my first meal, and I'm looking at the sloppy Joe, and I'm just like, why? Like, why are they serving this to cancer patients or any sick person in the hospital, right? So, of course, yes, I ate some of it. I was starving. I hadn't eaten in a couple days. But it was strange, right? It was strange to me. I filed it away, right? It was a red flag. So the next thing that happened in the hospital that stuck with me was on the day I was leaving, and we were there 5 days, the surgeon came in to see me one last time, and I asked him, is there any food I need to avoid? Because I didn't want to go home and like eat the wrong thing, and then my stitches go out, or, you know, like screw up the whole surgery. I mean, you know, I didn't know anything. And I was afraid of Doritos. You
right.
know what I mean? So
all natural to be concerned about.
Yeah. Like, I don't want to screw anything up, right? So I said, yeah, is there any food I should avoid? And he said, no, I just don't lift anything heavier than a beer.
Wow.
So, and that was it. I mean, that end of sentence, right? And of course, I was making a joke, and I laughed, chuckled, or whatever. But part of me was a little disappointed that he didn't have any nutritional advice. So I went home, and I had they told me I had about 6 weeks to recover, and then we would start chemotherapy. And as soon as I sobered up from the pain medication within a week or so, I was just really thinking about my life. I was thinking about, was I going to see, how many birthdays was I going to see? And was I going to have kids? Were my parents going to have to bury their only child? right? What was my wife going to do? You know, was she going to become a widow? And I was thinking about chemotherapy and what it would be like to be a chemo patient. And I didn't have any real world experience with cancer at that point. I had no friends or family members that had ever been through it. I'd seen a few people at church that I didn't really know, you know, like, oh, they have cancer, and like, wow, they look really sick, that kind of thing. But that's all, just had this much experience.
TV, which dramatizes.
TV, and it wasn't on TV as much then as it is now. But still, like this much experience with cancer, but enough to know that chemotherapy was poison. And the idea of poisoning my way back to health, like I couldn't make sense of it. It didn't make sense. And I'm a very logical person. Like I have to understand if I'm going to do something, you know, I'm not logical about lunch necessarily, but if I'm going to do something important, something big, I really have to believe in it. It has to make sense. And I just didn't believe chemotherapy would help me. And so I was very conflicted. I didn't know what to do. Didn't know what else I could do. And my wife and I were believers, and we prayed. And we prayed about this, and I said, God, you know, if there's another way besides chemotherapy, just show me. Because I don't know what to do, right? I'm desperate. Like, I don't know what to do. And a couple days later, I got a book that was mailed to me from a man in Alaska. I'm in Memphis, Tennessee. And this is a man who knew my dad. Never met him. And he sent me a book called God's Way to Ultimate Health. And, you know, I'm asking God for an answer, and then I get this book called God's Way to Ultimate Health. Right?
Your sign.
So I'm like, okay, like, I guess I should read this. Let's see what this is about. And I think that the tagline on the book is you know, eliminating sickness through nutrition or something like that. Start reading the book. It turns out the guy that wrote it, George Malcolmus, had colon cancer 30 years prior and healed it with by radically changing his diet. Tons of raw fruits and vegetables, tons of carrot juice, right? Eliminating all the processed food and the junk food and meat and dairy and everything else. And as I'm reading his story, I just broke down. I mean, I was sitting on the couch by myself and just, you know, choked up. With it. Yeah, I knew it was an answer to my prayer. I mean, there was just no doubt. And of course, I immediately called my wife and I was like, I know what I'm going to do. I got this book and this guy and he healed his colon cancer. You know, I'm all excited about it. And she was like, what? Like, no, you're still doing chemo. And I'm like, I don't think I want to do chemo. And then all of a sudden I'm getting phone calls from family members. Well, we heard you're thinking about not doing chemo. You've got to do chemo. That's, you know, you got to do what the doctor says. They know best. I mean, don't you think if anything else worked, they'd be using it? And I thought, well, gosh, yeah, I guess that makes sense. I guess maybe they would. Like, why wouldn't they, right? And this book also talked a little bit about the medical industry and how doctors are not trained in nutrition and how there's no money in nutrition, right? And they're only trained to prescribe therapies that make money, which is pharmaceutical drugs, right? Of course, surgery and radiation. And those are the most profitable ways to treat cancer. Not cure it, not heal it, but to treat it. And so that started to make sense to me as I started to read and research more and more about the way our medical industry is set up. It's for profit, and they're really only interested in therapies that make a lot of money, especially patented pharmaceutical drugs. So things started to click in my mind. It started to make sense why the doctors didn't talk about nutrition, you know, just wasn't even a part of the conversation. But I was getting all this pressure from my family, some of my family members, to do chemo. So I reluctantly agreed to go see the oncologist. If someone, I don't even remember who, but one of my family members said, you know, maybe they have some alternatives. You know, just go hear what they have to say. So I'm like, okay. We go to the clinic, the oncology clinic. The parking lot's packed. You know, the waiting room's packed, and
what you see in the waiting room is not pretty.
The waiting room, yes. I mean, what was crazy was, it was me, 26 years old, shaggy hair, handlebar mustache, like rock dude.
Right.
Okay? And a bunch of gray hairs. Literally. I mean, you know, I'm looking around the room trying to identify with people. There was no young adults in there. It was all 50, 60, 70, 80-year-old people. And I just thought, God, I do not belong here. Like, what am I doing here? And there was just a spirit of fear, you know, in that place.
Like, what are you doing with colon cancer to begin with at your age?
Yeah, and I was kind of a freak anyway, being 26 with colon cancer, because even though it's on the rise in young adults, it's still very much an old person's disease, as are most cancers. So the TV's on in the waiting room. It's on the Today Show. And out comes Jack LaLanne. And he starts going off about nutrition, juicing, and fruits and vegetables. And he's like, this is why we're sick, because we're eating all this man-made processed food and junk food. You know, you got to get back to fruits and vegetables and juicing. And, you know, you can restore your health and heal your body. And he said, if man made it, don't eat it. And I'm like, I can't believe this is on right now, right?
What'd you do, run out?
Yeah, I know. I should have just been like, I'm out of here. But
there's your sign again.
But it was another sign, right? And I'm like, wow. And I was like, can you believe this is on right now? And my wife was like, yeah, it's pretty weird, you know. Going to see the oncologist, and it was a very unencouraging conversation.
Yeah.
You know, he was very robotic. He was just, I mean, you know, an oncologist, they see tons of patients every day. You know, they're like, who's this guy? What's his name? What's he got? Okay, a quick review. Let's go talk to him. Comes in. He's like, all right, you know, you've got stage 3 colon cancer. You've got a 60% chance of living 5 years. And, you know.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
To hear that, especially at your age. Hearing that at my age, it was terrifying.
Yeah. I'm 26, right? 60%. So I'm like, 60%? Geez, I mean, that's awfully close to 50%. That's like a coin toss.
I can't flip a coin and get what I want most of the time.
Yeah. And, you know, a lot of cancers, it's 50-50. So I'm like, I'm not inspired by these odds, right? Turns out he was exaggerating. The 5-year survival was really, for stage 3C, was about 28%.
Oh, gosh.
And he told me the average for all cancers lumped together, 60% of cancer patients live 5 years. So I'm going to make it to the 5-year mark. Some of them are still sick, have cancer, die, whatever. I didn't know any of that. But he told me that. I asked him about alternative therapies, and he said, nope, there are none. If you don't do chemotherapy, you're insane.
Yeah.
And that scared me bad. I mean, I was just like, okay.
And how do you feel about that? The doctor believed that.
Oh, yes. He believed it 100%.
He wanted to save your life.
Serious.
He believed that if you had a chance, you better do what he's recommending.
That's right. And, you know, he told me that 60% survival number, I guess, to give me some hope or whatever. But, I mean, that's false hope. You know, a lie is false hope. Okay? So, and, you know, I don't remember the rest of the conversation because I just kind of like was deer in the headlights.
You're
you
tuning
know?
out.
Yeah, it was just kind of a blur. But what happened was I walked out of his office and I went to the desk and I made an appointment to get a port put in to start chemotherapy. I went into that clinic confident because I'd been on the raw vegan diet for a week. Okay? I was doing it.
So you're already thinking you're fighting it.
I mean, I jumped in head first, right? I mean, all in. Raw vegan diet, juicing, buy a juicer, let's go. Like, I was already on that path.
From this book? Yeah.
And so I came into the clinic confident, and he scared me so bad that I made an appointment to get a port put in and start chemo. And that was still going to start in a few more weeks. But I kept on. During those weeks, I kept juicing and eating tons of fruits and vegetables, and I was feeling good, and I was excited. I was reading and researching more, and when the day came to show up for chemotherapy, I didn't show up. Okay, to go get the port put in, I didn't show up. I was like, I'm not going.
Yeah, I'm
not going. I feel good. This makes sense to me, right? And I was thinking, you know, chemo, that's a last resort for me, right? It's always going to be there.
Did they call you? Because I used to get phone calls like it was a sales call every Friday.
Yes, they called me. They sent me a certified letter, you know, that you have to sign for, saying, you missed your appointment to get the port put in. We're concerned about your health. Please call the doctor immediately. You know, and eventually they stopped calling because I didn't return their calls. But, yeah, there's so much pressure to do conventional therapy, right? There's so much pressure to follow that path. And when thinking back on it, it was almost like I had two paths before me. And on one path was brightly lit, well paved, and it was almost like a path to a train station where everyone was going and getting on a nice comfy train and just, zoop, you know, all their needs were met. It was comfortable. Everything they needed just was right there, right? Everyone was going that way. On my other hand was a jungle with no path that I had to hack my way through.
Oh gosh, that's such a great analogy,
alone.
Chris.
In the middle of the night.
And everybody worried about you going through that jungle.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like me.
The pioneer.
Yeah, it's like me and Jesus over here, right? And then everybody else over here. And they're all going, no, you're going the wrong way. Don't
That's
go
right,
that
and
way.
they do see it that way.
Yeah, and look, they love me. The doctors, sure, they care about their patients. My family loved me and cared about me. My mom was a huge supporter of my decision, by the way, which was, in the beginning, she was the only one. But everybody else thought I was nuts. And that made it extra hard. Extra hard. And for some people, they don't have whatever I had, the will to live, the fortitude, the determination, whatever it was, maybe all the above. Some people just don't have enough of that to, you know, chart their own course, you know, to listen to their instincts and their intuition when it's telling them go this way and everyone else is telling them go that way. You know, for
You're
some
right.
people it's too hard.
I've talked to a lot of cancer patients as a cancer patient advocate, and I can hear the difference in, it's like their spirit coming through. Some are strong, some aren't.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, it's because of their influences around them.
Yeah.
If you have support like your mother, your wife, that makes a huge difference.
Huge.
And some of them are alone.
Yeah.
And regardless of someone being on their side or not, they're listening to that instinct, and it's loud, and it's saying, I want to survive, I want to beat this, and something is saying no to all these toxins, and I'm not going to go down.
Yep.
That's what mine was.
Yeah. There's a fighter spirit, right? But then, which a lot of cancer patients have in the beginning, they have that fighter spirit, and they want to fight, and they want to get well, but they think fighting means chemo. And but everyone I've ever talked to, and I've talked to hundreds of cancer patients, hundreds as a coach and health coach, and over the years, and I can tell you every single one of them said, I didn't have a good feeling about chemotherapy. I didn't want to do chemotherapy. You know, a lot of them said it didn't make sense to me. But everybody said I had to do it, so they reluctantly agree to do it. And then when it doesn't, when the results are not what they hope, which is, you know, for most people, the chemotherapy might eliminate a tumor, best case. Oftentimes it just shrinks it, and then within a few months it's back.
It's back.
And it's back with a vengeance.
It reminds me of weed killer on roses or something.
Yeah.
The weeds go down, and oftentimes the flower goes too. I killed morning glories that way.
That is exactly right. And so some people have this wake-up call moment, right, where they're like, I don't want to do more chemo. It didn't work the first time. And then they're out looking for answers and, you know, looking for alternative therapies or nutrition, like trying to figure out, they want to get well. They don't want any more poison. And so to sum up my story in a nutshell is I just continued with that diet. Tons of fruits and vegetables, tons of juicing, 64 ounces of carrot juice every day. I found a naturopath who helped me with supplementation, modified my diet a little bit. I went from raw vegan to eating a little bit more cooked food and going to what you could call maybe 98% plant-based instead of 100%. And it worked a little better for me. I gained my weight back and was more satisfied.
What did the doctor say when you were going in for your labs? I'm dying to hear.
So I never went back to the doctor that told me I was insane for not doing chemotherapy. You know, I didn't like him. I thought he was a jerk. But I found another oncologist who was in his 70s, and he was awesome. He'd been around forever, right? He did vitamin C IVs for me when no one else in Memphis was doing them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, his name was Dr. Roy Page, and he's actually passed away now.
That's sad. I was going to get that information from you.
He was such an amazing man,
He
just
did
a
something
godsend.
good.
And he was, even in his 70s, he was still traveling to China, going to conferences to learn about Eastern medicine. I mean, to learn about alternative therapy. I mean, he was just passionate about learning and helping people, you know, like refining his practice. And I think that really came later in life for him. because he'd seen so many people
leaving a good footprint behind.
Yeah,
too.
he'd seen so many people go through the motions of surgery, chemo, radiation, and it didn't work. I mean, ultimately, it works in the short term, not in the long term, and they die. But so he was a huge support. And so piece by piece, right, as I was sort of completely trusting God to lead me, right, stepping out into the unknown, he just continued to bring me the right people at the right time, the right information at the right time, you know, and just like, it's like those little signposts, you know, you go down the interstate, the mile markers, you know, you go for a while, like before GPS, you know,
where's the next?
Like, yeah, if anybody's ever driven with an atlas, right,
Yeah.
you're driving, you're like, I don't know where we are, you know, and you're like, what's the next exit, you know? Yeah, and you're just hoping you're going the right way.
Yeah.
And I was really praying for reassurance, for confirmation, right? And God is faithful. He was faithful. He just continued to remind me, you're on the right path. You're doing the right things. Don't be afraid. You know, don't be afraid, because fear is a big problem with cancer.
It is.
It's a huge problem. And fear suppresses your immune system. Fear and worry and negativity and all negative emotions, including bitterness and unforgiveness and resentment, they all suppress your immune system. They're so profoundly powerful in the body in a negative way. And so during that process, as I was reading and learning from others that had healed and healers, those ideas kept coming up. And I realized, wow, I got to change the way I'm thinking, got to change my emotions. I've got to let go of everything and stop being... And I was a pretty bitter, negative, cynical young guy, you know? It's selfish.
What were some of the things, because in order to do that, I know from experience, because I got cancer twice, and I had a lot of things going on in my environment, in my life, that it was very difficult to change that. So it was cancer, and then it was things that weren't going right, whether it was a relationship or not having the emotional support. What were some of the things that you did? Because it does take, I mean, I would write positive things on my IV bags when I was doing vitamin C infusions.
Mm-hmm.
I would write God's prescription, healthy cells.
That's great.
You know, I actually had to do something to change it, because I couldn't just think positive.
Yeah. So I did several things. One was thinking positive. I mean, that was part of it. Where every day I had sort of had a mantra that I'm healed, I'm healthy, I'm well, right? Every day I would just speak that, right? Speak that life, and then my prayer life was continually just thanking God. It was thankfulness, like
Gratitude.
Thank you, God, for not only you just start taking stock in what's good. Like in the good things you have. And so, thank you for my wife. Thank you for my house, right? Thank you that I can get up and now I'm recovered from surgery, no complications. I can actually go and run, right? Like it's tough when you're laid up.
Yeah.
You really, really, really want so badly just to be able to walk and run and like feel normal. And so I just started exercising so much gratitude and thankfulness, and then thanking him for healing me, you know? I'm thanking you in advance, right? Thank you for healing my body.
Mm-hmm.
And
like, I know you're going to do this. Have confidence.
Yep.
Thank
absolutely.
you.
And then meditating on scripture, all the healing verses in the Bible. And I really started studying the Bible and reading every incident in the Bible where healing was described, right? Miraculous healing. I would read it and meditate it and think about it and sort of internalize it, you know, and try to learn from it and see, is it God's will for me to heal or not? Because that's a big question. Is it God's will for you to be sick, or is it God's will for you to be well? Are you sick because he wants you sick, or why are you sick? So these are questions you really need to get to the bottom of. You know what I'm saying?
And getting past the point of why me?
Yeah.
And completely transitioning to, maybe there's a reason why I'm sick, because I'm going to be able to help so many other people.
Yeah.
That's the beginning, and then
and
a new assignment in life.
Yes. And part of the reason why I was sick too was learning about the Western diet and lifestyle. Wait a second. You mean there's parts of the world where cancer rates are 10 times lower than the U.S.? Rural parts of India and Africa and China and of course Southeast Asia, South America. Like, wait a minute. Why don't they have as much cancer as us? What does their diet and lifestyle look like? It's very different. They eat tons of plants, very little animals, very little processed food. So
They don't have planes flying over with pesticides.
Yeah, they don't have exactly as many the toxic exposure. They don't have as much lifestyle stress, right? They're more active. Like, so there's all these, and it's really, you can boil it down to about 4 things: your diet, your lifestyle choices like alcohol and tobacco and exercise, your stress levels, and environmental pollution. I mean, you can really boil it down. Those are the 4 key factors of health or disease.
Yeah.
If they're absent, if some of them are absent, you're more likely to have disease. Or if some of them are present, like alcohol, tobacco, and environmental pollution, you're more likely to have disease. But anyway, so the great thing is learning, it's my cat, was learning that I had some control over my fate. That I wasn't just a genetic defect, that it wasn't just bad luck, which is what a lot of the medical industry want you to think. And that, wait a minute, my choices might have something to do with this. And if so, then my choices from today forward, maybe they can turn it around, right? If I contributed to my disease, maybe I can contribute to my health. That was very empowering.
That is very important what you just said. And we don't hear that a lot when people are diagnosed with cancer. We hear the anger about having to face chemo or radiation. We hear a lot of blame, but there's such a huge responsibility in looking at what have you done so far to get to this point, and what can I do now? We have that power.
Yep.
And if I could, this is really good that we're actually talking about this, if we could just take complete responsibility of our life and then decide what professionals, what we want to bring in to restore that balance and be in charge of it.
Yes. There's an idea that I really oppose in the cancer community, and that is this don't blame the victim mentality, right? That if you suggest that perhaps someone has cancer because they haven't been taking care of themselves, right?
Yes.
That perhaps a poor, diet, eating the standard American diet, a Western diet, not exercising. If you suggest that maybe those are factors in getting cancer and or reversing it, people say, how dare you blame the victim, right? But the truth is, you need to take the blame.
Just do
it's
it all
empowering.
on your own.
It's empowering to take responsibility and say, you know what? Hey, maybe this is my fault, and it's okay. And if it is my fault, then guess what? I need to hold up a mirror, and I need to look at the man in the mirror.
Yes.
To quote Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
But I got to do some work on me. Like, I've got to change. If this is my fault, I need to change.
And that
how I'm
fault
living.
doesn't have to be that
Doesn't have to be
they're
negative.
someone bad. Their environment, they could be in an abusive marriage.
Yes.
And now it's time to get out because they're compromising their health.
Right.
And they might need to reach out for help.
Yes.
It's time to reach out and ask for help and expose what's going on in your life.
Yes.
So that you can get the help you need.
Well, every
that
cancer
could just be emotionally charging and suppressing your immune system.
Yeah, and every cancer patient needs to identify the causes of cancer in their life. And most of them kind of know. Like, I've talked to so many. Most of them, I think the most important question you can ask a cancer patient is, why do you think you have cancer?
Yes.
Because most of them know. Most of them tell me stress. That's almost always one of the reasons they think they have cancer. The other one is, haven't been taking care of myself, which is usually because of stress. It all boils down to stress. But their doctors aren't talking to them about that. They're not talking about what's going on in your life. Are you in an abusive relationship? Right? What's your home life like? What's your family like? What is your work life like? Because if you have a super stressful work life and a really unhappy home life, right? And problems with your siblings or your parents or your kids, I mean, that is some seriously heavy stuff that's going to weigh on you, suppress your immune system. And if toxic stress persists in your life for a matter of months or years, like unrelenting stress, it will break you down.
Yeah.
There's just
you
no
can
doubt.
feel it when you pay attention.
Yeah.
That when you go somewhere where you have a lot of support, my best friend's house, and I go and I visit, you feel energy.
Yeah.
You feel energized. You feel loved. There's a big difference that there's something going on with your immune system there.
Yeah.
The blood's flowing, the oxygen's flowing, everything is going good.
Mm-hmm.
Being focused and paying attention to all of that.
Yes. You know, cancer is a wake-up call.
Yeah.
It is a divine tap on the shoulder, and the message is the way you're living is killing you.
Yeah.
That's the message. And if you receive it, then you've got to change everything about your life.
Yes.
You have got to change the way you're living and reclaim your life. Take control of it. Take responsibility for it. Sure, you want to work with doctors or whatever, that's fine. But you cannot place all of your hope, faith, and trust in a doctor to save your life, right? To heal you, to cure you, or whatever. We know statistically it's very unlikely to happen anyway.
Well, look at their appointment book.
Yeah.
They're not following you home.
No.
You may or may not be telling them everything if they ask, do you smoke? Do you drink? Do you do recreational drugs? Everybody knows if they're being honest with their doctor.
Yeah.
Because they're nervous about why did I get cancer in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of guilt that goes with those questions.
Yep.
Then, afterwards, if the doctor does say, according to what's been reported to him, do A, B, and C, if that's in line with being healthy, he's still not going to follow you around. It's
Right.
known that exercise helps.
Huge.
And
It's huge.
he's not watching you to see if you go get a gym membership or if you're going to walk 3 times a week at the minimum
Yeah.
for a half hour.
Yeah.
We have to be responsible. That is our responsibility.
Look, there was a study on breast cancer patients where they had after 9 years, women with breast cancer that exercised an average of 30 minutes a day of walking, which is not much, had like a 50%,
It was 50%.
increased survival after 9 years.
Not getting it, no recurrence.
I mean, yeah, come on. That's just walking 30 minutes a day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exercise is huge. I mean, again, but truth is simple. Diet, eating tons of food from the earth, exercise, moving your body, removing stress from your life, and then investigating whether or not you have some serious environmental toxin exposure, like, your home, your work situation. I mean, if you're working in a chemical factory, it's time to quit,
Yeah.
So, I did all that, all of the above, right?
Wow,
it was
that's
a
great.
huge life-changing undertaking, right? Huge, just rearrange my whole life.
Now
to
you're
get well.
younger. How is
Yeah.
this with your age group? Have you found a lot of people reaching out to you?
Oh yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, in not as many in my age group because again, young adult cancer is not as prevalent as middle-aged adult or elderly adult cancer, but
Are they interested enough to be,
my generation,
preventative?
yeah, health is kind of cool right now. You know what I mean? Like healthy is the new black or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's great to see the young generation, especially like people in their early 20s being like really up on eating organic food and clean food and exercise. And, so that's great. I mean, it's only going to help people. But yeah, I'm bombarded with people that are like, help, I've got cancer. What do I do? I've been through chemo, radiation, it didn't work. Like, I don't want to do it anymore. Occasionally there are people that are like, I don't want to do it to start with. Like, I'm going hardcore natural nutrition. I'm going to do that first. But the vast majority, it's usually a last resort, or close to it, when they've just put all their trust in the doctor, gone all the way down the line, and then they get to the end of the line and the doctor says, well, you're terminal, we've done everything we can do, so here's some medication for the pain, and here's who could take care of you for hospice, right?
Yes.
And then, but people are like, but I'm not ready to die. I don't want to die. What do you mean you've done everything? Like, then they're like getting on the internet, finding me or somebody. Yeah.
I don't know if your doctor did this, but day 1 of being told I was diagnosed, the doctor said, do not get on the internet.
I know.
Now I know why.
Yeah. He didn't tell me that because in 2004, there wasn't much on the internet about cancer or healing cancer. I mean, I looked. I couldn't really find anything. everything I learned was just books. You know, one book to the next book to the next book to the next book. I didn't get any help on the internet. I mean, zero. There was no YouTube, of course, no Facebook, Twitter, no social media.
Wow.
Yeah, it just wasn't. It wasn't there. And yeah, there were some random like sites about cancer and alternative stuff, but they were really sketchy, and I just wasn't. I don't know. You know, I was just not really sure about them. Didn't really trust them. It's not like it is now. And it was like websites with no name and no face, and here's some information. You know what I mean?
Right.
But now, yeah, you've got tons of people like me. Here I am, real person. Here's my name. Like, you know, here's what I did. And testimonials all over YouTube. Yeah, I mean, it's just...
Yeah, it's not...
It's an exciting
conspiracy
time.
theories anymore like it used to be.
It's gotten so validated. I mean, and I've interviewed dozens and dozens of survivors from my own site to share their stories, because the more we get together, the more we can help people, and the more the world will have to pay attention that nutrition matters, that the body can heal cancer. It created it. It can heal it, right? There are options besides surgery, chemo, and radiation. And
people don't know.
It's exciting.
There's so many people that don't even know they want a gluten-free diet, and then they switch and they go to corn, and they don't know what's wrong with the corn. And
yeah, they're eating tons of GMO corn.
They have no idea.
Roundup, on it. Yeah.
And they don't understand. They just don't have the information. It's not being passed out or taught in health classes in school.
No.
And it should be in the books.
No, it is not.
Because that is what's going on right now.
But it's exciting because with what we have now, with all the information online, which can be a little overwhelming, it's sort of a double-edged sword, right? It's great because you have unlimited information. You have more than you can even go through. But on the flip side, it can be a little bit overwhelming because people are like, there's too many options, too many opinions. Now what? And they get paralyzed.
I know of a woman that we
too.
interviewed who went through chemo, radiation, and she was in tears and said she wanted to do it the healthy way, but she was overwhelmed because there was too much information, and her oncologist was telling her that her cancer was aggressive and she needed to hurry. So she just kind of, forget it, I'll just go with what my doctor says.
Yeah.
But then, when she went through it all, she ended up at a point where she said, I just wish I had done it.
I hear that a lot. I got a message on Facebook today, exact same message. I wish I'd found you sooner. I wish I'd known what I know now.
So there is a lot of information, and it is overwhelming.
We're just out there pushing,
Yeah.
trying to get through, trying to reach people before they have to make that tough decision.
Yeah.
Trying to plant some seeds, lay a little bit of groundwork, and so that...
You're doing great, Chris.
Well, hey.
Every time I look at your site, I see more people that have...
we're just
told their
trying to share information.
Yeah.
Just trying to help people. We can learn from the experience of others.
We have to share our stories. Yeah. So what are you doing now, Chris? 11 years later.
11 years later, I have a fairly popular website health blog called Chris Beat Cancer, where I not only share my story and things that I've researched, nutritional science, but also interview lots of survivors and people that have healed naturally using all kinds of methods, all kinds of therapies. But it's always based in nutrition. There's always a foundation of nutrition, but then they're doing different things too. So anyone and everyone that is healed cancer, I want to share their story. It's important to me. So that's a big part of my life. I do a lot of coaching, so people contact me with all kinds of health problems, including cancer, and they just want some direction, some guidance, some bounce ideas off me, looking for resources. So that's a big part of my life too.
You also did something, I saw a video on Tower Garden.
You have a Tower Garden,
which I think is great because some people don't have a space. They're going, how am I going to do a garden?
Yeah.
But there are some things that they can start doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they look you up.
Yeah, just look. We're
What's
trying
your
to
website?
help people get well, stay well, right? It's a very simple mission. It's chrisbeatcancer.com.
That's a good website. Victorious.
Yeah.